Our mission: Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting parents whose children have passed. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. Helping Parents Heal goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. Helping Parents Heal affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Zoom meetings run by leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of Helping Parents Heal meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics, such as afterlife evidence and connecting with our children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here with us this evening.
I
You're
should
muted,
introduce myself. Okay, I was going to say, welcome everyone, and I want to say that we have a real treat tonight. Reverend Sue Frederick is going to be introducing Doctors Earl and Linda Backman, so I'm going to pass the baton to her. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm so thrilled to be introducing two amazing people. And I consider Dr. Linda Backman to be a cherished friend and a cherished teacher. And here is her amazing bio. Featured on Coast to Coast AM and Gaia TV, Dr. Linda Backman is an expert teacher, regression therapist, and licensed psychologist with 45 years of private practice experience, including 30 years of guiding soul regressions. Linda was trained by soul regression pioneer Dr. Michael Newton, and they worked together training other therapists for 3 years. Linda has conducted thousands of past life and between lives soul regressions in person and remotely. Linda founded the RavenHeart Center and Training Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1997 and teaches regularly worldwide. Linda's books are Soul Design, coming out in 2025, Souls on Earth, The Evolving Soul, and Bringing Your Soul to Light. She is an international expert in understanding how reincarnation plays a pivotal role in our personal growth and relationships. Now, here is Dr. Earl Backman's bio. Dr. Earl Backman is a former university professor and administrator, trained mediator, and is skilled in conflict resolution, coaching, and consulting. He has held academic and administrative positions at universities in North Carolina and Arizona, following receipt of his Ph.D. in 1971 from the University of Oregon. He served as Dean of Social and Behavioral Sciences, as well as University Ombudsman for Northern Arizona University from 1984 to 1997. Earl has also worked with Dr. Linda Backman, his spouse, in making several national presentations on couples therapy, as well as having worked with couples in her former psychology practice. He is an author, a nationally known consultant, and is trained in both past life and between lives soul regression, as well as in the application of shamanic practices. In addition to managing business aspects of the RavenHeart Center, Earl has conducted channeling sessions for clients since 2010. He also consults with clients in the development and/or expansion of their healing practice. Earl Earl and Linda live in the Boulder, Colorado area, my former hometown, and their website is RavenHeartCenter.com. Take it away, Linda and Earl.
Okay, cool. It's like, oh my gosh, long bios are sort of like maybe, almost too much information. Well, just briefly, I'll introduce myself and Earl will do the same just in regard to our spiritual focus. And I think the most, I say this every time we're with you, wonderful, wonderful HPH people, our most important credential, and I really mean this, is that we are also shining light parents. And in 1972, we experienced the premature birth and death, premature well into pregnancy, the premature birth and death of our second son, our son Adam Backman. And so that, that's our true credential. I'll just say very briefly, and let Errol say what he wants to add. For me, I discovered soul, and I'll say a bit more about this in a bit, but I discovered soul when a very, very, very close colleague of mine in his early 30s passed from a type of lung cancer, and he began to speak to me from the other side. And what that triggered in just very simple terms is I wanted to know, what is the soul? Where do we come from? How do we plan to come into body? And then what happens when we leave our bodies? And I'll hang on to the mystery of what we're going to talk about tonight and what Earl's going to channel about. But understanding soul is what I've been working on for 30 years in my career. So I'll hand it over to my spouse, I'll just say, of 57 plus years, my husband, Earl.
It's great to be with you both. Both great to be with you all. Yeah, I don't need to repeat any of the information that Sue mentioned, but what really gives me passion in this part of my life is to work with individuals who are dealing with this life issues and trying to understand their current life. I'm blessed in the fact that I frequently am able to channel for individuals who have loved ones on the other side, and sometimes they spontaneously come through. I'm not a medium, I'm a channel, so I never expect that to happen, but sometimes it happens because the individuals I work with are putting out such intense energy to their loved one, their child, or even a spouse that's on the other side, that they just come through, not because of anything I do, but because of the energy of the individuals I'm working with. I've been working since I was 25 years of age. That's a long time ago. And I am more passionate about the work I do now, working with individuals one-on-one, 4 days a week, than I have ever been in my life. And it's one of the reasons that Linda and I keep working at our age, because it's our passion. And we'll be talking a little bit about that, because it's passion that drives one to accomplish their soul intention.
Okay, good, beautiful. Well, for for Earl and I, it's like we could say a zillion things about so many different topics, but where we really want to go tonight with all of you is talking about how does the soul decide to come into body and how does that work? And then what I think is probably even more pertinent when we're all shining light parents is where's our child now? What's our child doing? How does that work? How do we communicate with them? How do they communicate with us? Earl and I chatted a bit with each other this morning and said, let's talk about, for the most part, incarnation and the other side. Because that's a lot of the work that I do. It is some of the work that Earl does. And then we'll just kind of hang on here for a few minutes, if you will. I'll describe the soul that Earl's going to channel. And then Earl's going to channel an ascended master, an ascended guide. And then we're going to talk to that soul about what's going on the other side. What kind of roles and commitments do our children have on the other side? What are they doing? And I know it may sound, maybe not to a group of shining light parents, it may sound a little bit I don't want to say everyday-ish, but it may sound like we're talking about people when we talk about the other side and what are the souls of our children and our other beloved loved ones, because I realize that we have, parents and siblings and spouses and that sort of thing on the other side. What are they doing? What's that like? Okay, so just a quick thumbnail sketch of what happens, and I want to focus now on children. What happens when our child decides to come in as our child? Okay, so make this as simple as I can, and keep thinking about questions, everybody, because no question is off base. Okay, so a child is going to come in, we're pregnant, no matter how that happens, or whether we're with our partner, we're not with our partner. What happens at the soul level is that there's an agreement. It's like, I'll use Earl and me and our son, our second child, Adam, as an example. So a couple, or sometimes a woman who, there's all kinds of circumstances about how we get pregnant, but a woman becomes pregnant. There's obviously a father involved. And what happens is there's this agreement. I mean, we're talking about three souls, and we're talking about three souls that make an agreement: the mom, the dad, and the child. Now, it's broader than that. There's grandparents and there's siblings, and that is a more global agreement, if you will. So the soul of our child, Adam, decided and agreed with the soul of Earl and the soul of me at the soul level, at the higher self level. The Linda soul, the Earl soul, and the Adam soul agreed that Adam would come into body, even though for us, of course, it was short. For some of you, it's a much longer period of time. And that's where the soul agreement is made, is in the higher realm, with purpose, always with purpose. And what happens is, if you think about 100% of the soul energy of your child, when your child comes into body, your child brings a holographic, a slice, a portion of their soul energy into body that causes them to live and breathe once the umbilical cord is cut. And that doesn't mean that the soul of our child isn't connected to the developing baby in the mommy's womb, because the soul is connected. But once the child is viable outside of mom's womb, then that child has a holographic, I like to say, aspect of soul that causes them to live and breathe. When what I call passing or transition at the end of a life, no matter how that happens, that same slice of soul operates on autopilot. And that slice of soul, maybe some of you have felt this, whether it was easy or it wasn't easy, have felt this sense of the soul is getting ready to leave the body, or the soul has left the body at the ending of an incarnation. And that same automatic, I call it elevation process from third dimension back to the spiritual realm, back to the higher self, that slice of soul just knows exactly how to navigate back to reconnecting in with the higher self. If support is needed, guides, loved ones, the soul guides and loved ones are right there to assist the process. So that's what happens, and we're going to talk about the soul realm. Earl, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's a perfect explanation. I don't think there's anything else for me to add at this point.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so now what's going on What is Adam doing? What is Morgan doing? What's happening in that higher realm? Okay, and that's where we want to go. Let me just say a couple things about that because I want to soon bring in the guide that Earl's going to channel. Our children, I'm saying this to everyone, our children take on agreements to aid Earth. Our children take on responsibilities, commitments, whether it's to guide you, the mom, the dad, the siblings, and that sort of thing. Whether it's, it could be to guide a group of people. And we're going to let this guide that Earl channels regularly talk to us about the other side. So maybe, Earl, I'm going to introduce Lord Maitreya,
Works.
and then we'll,
Ready? He's ready.
okay, perfect. Okay. And I'm not going to take time. You all maybe in the future, Elizabeth and Irene, maybe we'll do another program like this so we can talk about, Earl and I can talk about how did this come to be? How did we figure out that Earl could channel? I am not a channel. I do the reverse. I guide clients to access their own soul level details. Earl is a channel. So, okay. So the soul that Earl is going to channel, we refer to this soul as, this is kind of the fancy name. It doesn't mean it's a fancy soul. Lord Maitreya. Okay. And for those of you that want to know how to spell that, Maitreya, Maitreya. Lord Maitreya is, if not the oldest soul in the earthly spiritual realm, he's among the oldest souls. He's been around a long time. Lord Maitreya does a lot of coordination work in what we call the spiritual realm, or call it heaven, the spiritual realm that's tied to earth. And Lord Maitreya coordinates souls in the higher realm that are working to aid humanity. Lord Maitreya has been Earl's guide, Earl's main guide. We all have spiritual guides. Call them guardian angels, call them spiritual guides. We can have more than one. Lord Maitreya has been Earl's primary guide for lifetimes. And once Earl and I started doing spiritual work together, Lord Maitreya became my primary guide. That's enough about Lord Maitreya. You all can put questions in the chat room, but I'm gonna ask questions to Lord Maitreya about the other side, and then I want all of you to figure out what your questions are, and we can pose any kind of a question to Lord Maitreya about the spiritual realm. So, Earl, when you're ready, and Lord Maitreya, when you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Linda. I am more than ready. Even more importantly, I am honored. I feel blessed with this opportunity to answer your questions, but to answer any questions that those who are in attendance wish to ask. Understanding what is going on in the spiritual realm, how the spiritual realm operates, is a primary purpose of mine. Because so much of what goes on in what in Western religious traditions might call Christianity about heaven is not true. Not true in a sense that there's a lot of activity going on in the spiritual realm. Loved ones who cross over, for whatever reason, the timing of their crossing is set. They don't just sit back and do nothing. They have responsibilities. Guiding Earth is the primary responsibility of the spiritual realm, where souls that have incarnated cross back over into their spiritual realm, uniting with their higher self to serve both their own respective evolution, but to guide often souls in body and to perform multiple responsibilities in the spiritual realm. Okay, Linda, I am ready. Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just want everybody to know we are not this has nothing to do with being either, it's not about anti-religion. It's simply that our loved ones, our children, have active, they're active. They're helping us and they're helping humanity in all kinds of ways. Okay. Oh my gosh, Lord Maitreya, you know me well. I ask you questions all the time.
I think every day is a better response than all the time.
That's totally true. That's totally true. And it is highly useful and beneficial as Earl and I move forward in our own life. Um, okay, maybe here's the first question. So many people probably don't know this about Earl and me, Lord Maitreya. So our beloved second child, Adam, was born breathing and viable, but not full term. And Adam was alive for not more than a number of hours the day he was born. So he was born and passed on the same day. Um, yeah, Lord Maitreya, say something, if you will, about what happens, okay, when a child, no matter whether they're like our premature baby or they're 12 years old or 18 years old or 35 years old, but they're still obviously a child. Um, what happens when that slice of soul of our child returns back to the spiritual realm?
Well, it's important to understand that souls, when they enter a body, they come for a purpose. Now, that purpose can vary, or there can be purposes. There can be reasons why. No matter how long that soul that becomes a child and they choose parents because they know their parents are going to give them what they need: support, love, caring, empathy, to help them evolve. They also often come as teachers. And sometimes they do both, but sometimes it's just one or the other. In your specific case, the soul of your son, Adam, came into your body for such a brief period to be a teacher for you, to teach you something, to guide you somewhere, to propel your life somewhere, and then transitioned back to joining their higher self, that aspect of their soul energy in the spiritual realm. That's where that soul energy went as automatically as can be, because you know that soul energy. You're well aware of that soul energy, that of your son. And so it connected back with their higher self to then provide guidance to you from the spiritual realm and to do what other tasks that soul energy is supposed to do in the spiritual realm. And realize that the tasks in the spiritual realm are constantly changing. The soul of loved ones who are on the other side, who have crossed over, they take on certain responsibilities, but those responsibilities are constantly changing. Does that answer your question?
It does, and it leads me to a couple of other questions. I'll try to hold them in my mind. The next question, Lord Maitreya, that's on my mind is, if you can answer this, how often, or is it much, how often have we as a mom, as a dad, have had past lives with our child that has crossed over, our child that has transitioned? How often have we known them before in previous lives?
For those souls that are earth-based, and I don't want to go into deviating too far in that, but for those souls that are earth-based, it's almost always they have shared past lives, frequently multiple past lives. Realizing again, and you accented this, Linda, and I will put a stamp on this, that the souls of children, when they enter the womb of the mother, it's important to know this was a choice. It's always a choice. And I think it helps parents to understand, why did the soul of our child choose us, or as a mother, choose me? Because it's really important to understand that, because that's a depth of the depth of that understanding is relevant to your question about past lives.
Okay, so if you can expand on that, Lord Maitreya, what might be some examples of, for what reason would a soul choose the mom, the dad? What might be some of the purposes and intentions for those what we would call soul contracts?
Well, the two major reasons are, one, the soul of the child chooses the parents because they feel the parents are going to give them what they need. They're going to give them whatever that might be, but love, support, positive energy, nurturing. In other words, often souls come into a body and they've had troubled past lives. They've had issues with a past life, karmic issues, trauma, drama, whatever. And in this incarnation, they're looking for a resolution of some of that trauma and karma from a past life. Doesn't have to be a recent past life. It could be a long time ago. But the reason to return to particularly the mother that gives birth is to often bring relief, bring some understanding, bring some deletion to whatever past experiences they had, and they're looking for that to be resolved in some ways. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is often these souls, and they're frequently very, very advanced souls, they come as teachers, as was the case for you and Earl. And it can be at any time frame when a child crosses over. Doesn't matter what that age is. Often they come as a teacher to teach parents in some way. I don't need to try to go into details, but they teach them things that they need to learn. And many times, once a child has crossed over, that soul has crossed over at whatever age, they often continue the teaching. And it's important for parents to open themselves up to receiving that teaching. And one of the teachings that is most common is to try to communicate to their parents from that past life that there was nothing they did wrong. There is no blame to feel. There is only joy to feel in having the energy of their child in their life for whatever time period that was. But often the soul energy of a child that has crossed over, and it could be a spouse, it could be whatever, but a child particularly that has crossed over works to communicate to their parents that this was not a result of whatever the reason or the how they crossed over, whatever caused their death, it was not about something parents did. And that's an important relief when parents can understand that and accept that. And the soul energy of a child works to communicate that back to their parents.
Yeah, I think, Lord Maitreya, that's such an important piece because, you know, what I learned years ago when I was going through the acute grief that I went through after Adam's passing, and what I learned about the grief process, which probably everyone here that's listening knows this, is that this sense of what I would just simplistically call coulda, shoulda, woulda is almost always a part of grieving. And not because there's anything that was done inappropriately or wrong, but because grief is that process of trying to grapple with what's happened and that our child is no longer, you know, in physical form in body. And maybe we coulda, shoulda, woulda done something differently. And that's simply an aspect of moving through the grief process. And as you say, Lord Maitreya, not because there was anything that was done that was inappropriate. So, okay. Well, there's I guess what I'll say at this point, Elizabeth and Irene, to both of you, Lord Maitreya could answer a lot more of my questions or my promptings about the other side, but rather than do that at this very moment, are there questions that people have brought forward? And if so, let's go to questions so we have plenty of time for that.
There are lots of questions in the chat box. So thank you for asking. And I'll go ahead and ask, I'll ask the first question if I can go back to the beginning so that we can start at the beginning because there are a lot of very good ones, in fact. Let's see. So the first one is, can the soul of a child communicate with the soul of her father while both are here on earth? A friend's granddaughter asked her father 3 days before he deployed, how do I talk to someone in heaven? Did her soul know that his soul was going to leave?
Well, that communication is definitely there. And it happens all the time. The issue with the parents, grandparents that embody is they have to believe, they have to know, and they have to accept that that level of communication between souls in the spiritual realm, higher selves, and souls and body exist. If you open yourself up to believe that's possible, then you open yourself up to a world of communication and understanding. It's the soul and body, that aspect of a soul that's in body, that's restricted. That's their views, their energy is compressed. But if you open that up to believing it's possible, then that communication is definitely there.
And probably for a child, more so than maybe an adult, because they're so close to the time that they came into this world, I would assume, more so than maybe the father. Um, Thank you for answering that. Marina has a question. Can you please talk about reincarnation? When the soul decides, if it decides to reincarnate, how soon can it happen? 20, 100, 500 years? Could you maybe talk about that?
Yes.
That's beautiful. Lord Maitreya, can I just very quickly insert a quick comment and then let you answer? Just yesterday, Elizabeth, that's a beautiful question. Just yesterday, Earl and I were chatting about the meeting tonight. And I said to Earl, I bet for sure there will be a question about reincarnation following the passing, the transition of a child, how that works. And then can we as the mom or we as the dad or we as the grandparent or siblings, can we still communicate with our sibling, our child on the other side? So I love that that's come up so quickly. So Lord Maitreya, you want to respond to that?
Yes. My pleasure indeed. First of all, you have to realize, I'll try to make this simple, but the soul and body that crosses over is an aspect of their higher self. In other words, as Linda had indicated earlier, one's higher self resides in the spiritual realm all the time. It's there, it's an anchor. And the aspect that's in body, when they cross over, that energy from their body reunites with their higher self. At that point in time, decisions begin to be made as to when will they incarnate again? What would be the purpose of incarnating again? It can be very quick or it can be very lengthy. There is no set time. But what is critical for particularly, I think, parents who have had a child cross over is to understand, or a loved one of any, it doesn't really matter, but we're speaking very much in terms of children that cross over, is when that soul, your son, your daughter, decides to incarnate again, is to know that the energy of your child remains in the spiritual realm. They have just taken a part of their soul energy to incarnate in another body. But their soul, the connection with you, remains. That is why often I'm asked, well, if with couples, if I die before my spouse, will I incarnate? And then when my spouse crosses over, I won't be there to welcome them. That is a myth. Doesn't happen. Because the soul energy of that partnership remains in the spiritual realm. It's just the way the aspect of that soul energy can incarnate into another body and still have the presence in the spiritual realm. And I will just say, there are frequent times when parents have had a child cross over, that the energy, that soul energy reincarnates, okay, into their lives in some other physical body. Could be a child, could be a grandchild, could be someone you know, and often you'll recognize that energy that is so familiar with you, because that soul energy into this new body is the same soul energy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I also just want to say that from what I understand, we're also over there with them. And I think that we interact with them, especially in our dreams when we're asleep. We wake up and we realize that we've had a very close interaction with our kids. So part of our souls as well is over there, not just part of our soul.
Let me comment on that because that's a beautiful thing. Remember, okay, when you're in a dream state, your mind is not in your way. Okay. Your mind is asleep, but your soul energy is awake. So when you're in a sleep state, then your soul energy in your body, this is the parent, that begins to loosen a bit. And what the reason for that is because it increases the availability of connection, the strength of the connection with the loved one in the spiritual realm. So for many parents, the dream state is the best place to connect with their loved one, their child on the other side, because you don't have the, oh no, that isn't true. No, I'm not really feeling that. You don't have your mind giving you those messages because your mind is asleep. It's your soul energy that is wide awake, alert, ready to receive that communication. And in fact, when I'm doing channelings, when I channel for Earl's clients, I recommend often, if you want to connect with your loved one on the other side, put that out before you go to sleep. Say, I want to have a dream that gives me information, that gives me what I want. Put that out. Be active with your higher self so that that energy can come through. And it can be very powerful, as you have stated. That dreams are amazing. And the dreams can often be metaphors, messages that you need to interpret that will be coming from the soul of your loved one on the other side.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I just want to let you know that Mary is saying that she had 2 miscarriages. So thank you for what you said at the beginning of the meeting, because these are questions that were written beforehand. Renee is saying, when someone ends their life, will their guides be there to guide, assist, and support that soul during the transition? And I know what the answer to this is, and I've already written it in the chat box, but I know that you can answer it even better.
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether I could answer it any better. That's perhaps giving me more credit than is due, but the answer, of course, is yes. And whether it's a miscarriage, and it depends, depends on the point in which the miscarriage occurs. Soul energy does not come in. The specific soul energy does often, even though that soul has identified, the mother has identified it, that energy of the soul in the spiritual realm doesn't immediately come in to the body. So the relationship of the soul energy of a child, of an embryo, it's not set because it depends on what time of the pregnancy the miscarriage occurs. And the later it occurs, the more likely that soul has anchored and is in that body. And if a miscarriage occurs at this point, it doesn't really matter, but at that point, the soul is in the body. That soul has served a purpose. And the purpose is often really hard for the mother. We'll say that in particular, because the mother's the one that miscarries. It's hard for the mother to understand, but sometimes it has a purpose. And being able to understand that purpose, and it's all about, again, communicating with your higher self in the spiritual realm to find out what that purpose is, because it is with purpose. It's not some serendipitous thing. It happens for a reason, and it is not because the mother carrying this fetus has done something wrong. It's
And Lord Maitreya, sorry to interrupt you. I think another piece of the question is, I think that's the question that Elizabeth was bringing forward is, does it matter how the child passes? Does it matter whether it's disease or a car accident or, some other means? Does it matter how the ending of the human life occurs?
No, it only matters to the parents, family members remaining in the earthly realm. In the spiritual realm, what happens is that when a soul crosses over, they meet with a group of very advanced souls to process that life. No matter how short or long it was, they process that life. They ask questions about what that life was about, why they needed to transition. It's all about helping that soul evolve. It's not about punishment. It's not about, oh, you were a bad soul. It's not that at all.
From
It's
what
a,
I've understood, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
From what I've understood, nobody really is a bad soul because we have a whole bunch of teachers here on earth that help us evolve. So the ones that we might think are the hardest and most difficult here on earth might be the ones that are teaching us the greatest lessons. Is that true?
Absolutely. There is no doubt about it. You are 100%
I,
correct.
I think even, to expand that, Elizabeth and Lord Maitreya, to expand that even more, our children, as Lord Maitreya has said, nearly always, if not always, come as teachers. We as humans get so caught up in human ways of thinking, like this is good and that's not good, and this is right and that's not right, and blah, 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 blah. And our children come, if everybody just thinks about, I know I find this if I happen to be working with a client who is a shining light parent, it's like I hear these incredible things, and I'm not just saying that. I hear these incredible advanced ways of treating other people, the child that's crossed over, the wisdom of that child that's crossed over. As all of you know, that's so very common that our children come as teachers to teach us to not be so black and white and judgmental as humans from our human perspective.
Beautiful. Going a little bit further with what we're talking about here, this question from Susan is so interesting. Um, and I'd like to know your opinion. Obviously, we talk about the choice of a child to be born to a mother and to have that soul plan with a mother. Susan's asking about an adopted child with another mother and father.
Mm.
Is how they leave this world already decided at that point. Her son passed by suicide. He has come to her to reassure her that he had guides and support, and that they all do. I mean, everyone has guides and support. That they were broken into groups, so the kids who are there, depending on each soul's need as well. Does that sound reasonable to you?
And you're talking about this in the spiritual realm?
In the spiritual realm, yes, broken into groups. And
Yes, I think yes. And remember that there's no universal answer to this, that souls that cross over for whatever reason, uh, children who cross over, but others, there's a period of acclimation, a period of learning from their incarnation that is just completed. There's a need to process what happened, because there are just from, no, I don't need to go there. So what you were saying and the question you were asking, yes, there's processing, there's group work, there is all of that to help the soul. Remember, souls evolve lifetime to lifetime, but they evolve in their incarnation. And so sometimes if their life is shorter than what the norm would be, there's a need for them to process that, even if they know in their own mind when they are in body that they have fulfilled their soul intention. They have done what they came here to do. They either as a teacher to parents or to receive from their parents what they needed in this incarnation. It has been satisfied. And then when they cross over, there's often a processing that goes on. And what you have just said, yes, group work is part of that when necessary or when desired.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. So Angela is saying, thank you, Lord Maitreya, for the reassurance that our child's death was not our doing. That on the other side, there is no blame or shame, even though I know that within my heart, the mind will throw this back up to me. So thank you, Angela, for writing that. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that before we read the next question.
And, Lord Maitreya, I want to just bring back around, and if you have comments, please share them, because I think a piece of the question, Elizabeth, just before this lovely, lovely comment, was also about adoption.
Yes, I'm sorry, and we missed
Yeah,
that.
no, that's fine. I just wanted to be sure that we comment on that, because I've guided regression clients who have that sort of question of how does adoption happen, and are there soul agreements that this mom and dad will biologically bring this soul to the planet, and this mom and dad will carry forward with the raising of the child. Lord Maitreya, do you want to comment on that?
All I could say, I'm sure probably time is running short, but that is accurate. There are those parents, there's a mother that willingly, even if it's not consciously, agrees to bring a child into an incarnation where they serve as a miracle, as a way of guiding that child into life, where that child can then be with a family that wants them and embraces them. And it is it's planned on both ends of that. Even if the biological, the mother giving birth doesn't know who's going to adopt that child, it's arranged. And so much of what I've said is, even if it's an adoptive parent, that soul energy of that child has made that choice for much the same reasons, being a teacher, learning, or whatever. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Yes. One last thing that I'd really like for both of you to explain to everyone, because I think that some people are confused. There are three types of souls that you talk about with Reverend Sue, Dr. Linda, as well as the two of you, I'm sure, talk about. One is the interplanetary souls, one is the angelic souls, and then one is the earth based souls. But one of the questions is about an earth-bound soul or a trapped soul. And maybe you could comment on that. I think that you're probably going to say that that is not one of the souls that exists and that doesn't exist. But I just was wanting your opinion on that, if you could just say something.
Do you want me to do that, Lord Maitreya?
Well, you can start.
Yeah, okay. Let me just quick comment about yes, the term earthbound soul is a term used in spiritual circles, and the implication of that term, and we're talking two different terms. Earthbound is not earth-based. So the implication of earthbound is that someone passes and their soul gets stuck, so to speak, and doesn't cross over. Lord Maitreya, it is my sense that that does not happen and that a soul does not become stuck and does not cross over. So can you just sort of briefly, maybe really briefly, because I know we're running out of time here, Lord Maitreya,
is
say
true.
anything?
That is true. Sometimes it takes a soul that has left their body. It sometimes takes a bit of time for them because they're so connected to the incarnation that they just left that it sometimes takes them a while to move up. But they are not stuck there. And what often happens is that soul energy of your loved one that's crossed over, that's still hovering around, their higher self, the energy of their higher self comes, it's like energetically comes down enough to help that aspect of their soul that has just crossed over to merge back with the higher self, back into the fifth dimension or higher, but out of the earthly realm.
Okay, beautiful. I'll just comment briefly. So yes, and especially with Reverend Sue, we've done programs with HPH to talk about, and we can take this farther. And maybe what this is speaking to, Elizabeth, is another future program. I have learned through my regression work there are, we might say, three types of souls, or the origin, three different origins of where the higher self comes from and resides, whether we're talking about our child or we're talking about ourselves, because we all have higher selves when we're in body and when we're not in body. So an earth-based soul, just simply explained, is a soul that is designed to grow and evolve primarily lifetime to lifetime and on and on and on, many, many lifetimes on Earth, in body on Earth. An interplanetary soul, and I think oftentimes, certainly not always, shining light parents many times have children that are interplanetary souls. These are souls that are highly evolved and they come from somewhere in the broader celestial realm. They're not just tied to Earth's spiritual energy, and they come from healthy cultures in the spiritual realm, and they come to Earth to help teach us because they're wise. And so that's an interplanetary soul. You can think of that term as ET or starseed. It all means the same. Then lastly, there are souls that do incarnate on Earth that come from the angelic realm. The angelic realm, I should ask you, Sue, to talk about this. The angelic realm serves source, serves the divine. These are souls that are, we would say, members of the angelic realm who serve pure love and compassion. When they incarnate, they bring that energy to Earth because I think we all know this Earth environment needs more love and compassion. So that's a quick but kind of wordy thumbnail sketch.
That was beautiful. And I have to just say that Susan is thanking you for that beautiful explanation about adoption. And it's fairly lengthy, but I can send you the chat box so that you can read it. I also just want to say that there are so many questions in the chat box. We'll have to do this another time because I know that there are a lot of other people who are on here who would like to ask questions and find out more information from you. But this has been absolutely wonderful. I truly appreciate both of you coming on from Boulder, Colorado, and having Reverend Sue Frederick on here as well, who is always such a huge part of helping parents heal, and we love her so much. And she and Dr. Linda Bachman have been close friends for quite some time now. And so, because she is from Boulder originally as well. So Anyway, thank you. Thank all three of you for coming on. I appreciate that everyone here is on as well. Again, I hope that you had a wonderful New Year's Eve. I hope that you know that 2025 is going to be an even better year. Maybe you could speak to that, Dr. Earl and Dr. Linda, about what's in store for us. And I know that Sue will be speaking to us again sometime soon about that as well. So could you just tell us what 2025 has in store for us in maybe a few
You
Well,
want
some
to,
of the
yeah,
information,
go ahead. Yeah.
some of
Go
the
ahead.
information we're getting from our guys is simply, it's going to be a major year of transformation. And for some people, I might even use the term, it's going to be a metamorphosis, which is the maximum way we change. Think about the caterpillar that becomes a butterfly. I mean, that kind of metamorphosis, a total change. We are really embracing the change that's coming. Both Linda and I are receiving a lot of downloads from our higher selves about transformations they are doing in the spiritual realm and how they are that those changes are going to affect us. I'll let you take it.
I mean, I just would repeat that. And I would say, for anybody who is worried about what 2025 might look like, I know this just sounds like I'm looking completely at the glass half full. I would say hang on to your hat. That old-fashioned phrase, hang on to your hat. I think there are going to be surprising, I want to say a push from the higher realm for humanity to expand and for some of the challenging aspects of life on Earth, for a light to be shined on that. And I can't help, last comment, then I'll stop talking. Last comment is, I am sure that our children on the other side have a role in pushing the change in 2025. So I'll just say for Earl and me, thank you, Elizabeth, Irene, for inviting us. We love doing this. Thank you, Sue. It's always fun to be with you and have you introduce us. And that's just kind of a very, very special part. So thank you, everybody. Happy 2025.
Yes, happy 2025. We're just so grateful that you are here with us. And I agree that our children are helping us. In fact, I think that our children in spirit are ultimately going to help save the world at some point, which is really exciting. So I think that they're going to help all of us move forward and heal even better. And thank you, Irene, for being on here as well. We always ask everyone to unmute and say thank you and good evening. So if you'd like to go ahead and do so, please do so now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Happy New Year.
Much
Happy
love.
New Year. Happy New Year. Happy
Bye,
2025.
Good night.
Have
Thank
a
you all.
wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.